I think everybody needs to hear on why hospitality is important and what the tech aspect is and how you could properly leverage tech for that.
I can leverage technology in a way to keep me on track or remind me about things to where I don't have to be worrying and thinking about it. It just frees me up to be more present with my team. It frees me up to be more present with anything I'm doing in that moment, you know? And I think that's what technology has the power to do if you can leverage it correctly.
40 to 60% of every single restoration employee's work is dedicated to this scut work that's meaningless, right?
Right.
And not to bash documentation, I think that's important and we all know the value of it, but like
Right.
It's tedious work to sit and do all this paperwork, put in all the notes and do all this stuff. And when you're doing that work, you're robbing that attention away from the customer, and then you're like half doing your paperwork, half taking care of the customer, and that's a recipe for disaster. And I love the fact that you guys think of different ways to take things off of technician, project managers' plates, so that way they can focus more on hospitality. Welcome everybody to the I'll Be After Hours podcast, where we talk about propelling restoration forward. I'm your host, Alex Duda, and today I am super honored to be here with Bob Moore, president of UWRG. How's it going, Bob?
Fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us. I love your crew. I love your group. And I want to get into your bio and your history a little bit, but at the very end, I want to make sure we cover one thing. Okay. You talked about unreasonable hospitality at the UWRG conference today and how you could leverage technology to achieve those outcomes. And I want to make sure that by the end of this show, we cover that. Does that sound like a plan?
Awesome. Sounds good to me.
Great. So, and we could share it all. We're going to give it all away to the viewers.
Let's go for it.
But before that, I want to set the stage. I think everybody's probably wondering who you are. So I'd like to start with your quick bio, kind of how you started out. I know you have a wealth of knowledge in franchising, a lot of experience in restoration. So do you mind telling people a little bit more about that?
Sure, not at all. So I have been in franchising for over 30 years. I used to say, I've been in franchising for almost 30 years. And my wife yelled at me and said, look in the mirror, look at all the gray. It's over 30 now. So so I spent 13 years with Domino's Pizza, first 6 working for corporate and various franchise owners. And then the last 7 years, I was a multi-unit franchisee, so on multiple Domino stores.
Oh, wow.
I did that until Bain Capital bought the company and started making a lot of changes that I didn't agree with. And I always said before I became one of those franchisees that had nothing good to say about the parent company, I'd sell. So that's what I did, sold. Okay. And took a little bit of time off. I had some small kids, enjoyed that a little bit. Didn't make enough money to retire, so had to figure out what I'm going to do when I grow up. And the next job I got in franchising was with one of our competitors right now, ServiceMaster. Wow. So it was a great company to work for. Loved the people I work with, but I ran their West Coast office out in California. We supported 134 franchisees over 5 states. Wow. Handful of carpet cleaning only, handful of janitorial franchisees, but the lion's share of our franchisees and the revenue in our region were restoration franchises. Wow. So my next promotion was taking me to Memphis. A lot of racial challenges going on there with my small kids. Didn't think it would be a good fit. So resigned and moved back east to be closer to family. And that's when I linked up with the next brand I worked with was Dunkin Brands. Oh, wow. Parent company for Dunkin' Donuts and Baskin Robbins. So I enjoyed a little over 10 years with them. Oversaw about a third of the country for all things people and training related. So another great company to work for. And then moved south, and that's where I hooked up with United Water Restoration Group now a little over 7 years ago. So,
congrats. That's awesome. What made UWRG stand out as the it seems like the final place that you decided to
Sure, it's a great question. I love the company's history about that you have some gentlemen from Hungary came over here, just willing to chase the American dream. They'll confess, I didn't know the language that well, and it was hard at first, but I just love their story. They came over and just worked hard, and they had their share of mistakes and things like that, but they just kept at it and built a great company, and then started franchising the concept. So it was an easy dream for me to latch onto, and I wanted to help them succeed.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What have been like maybe some of the biggest challenges in the past 7 to 8 years as you've been entering this new organization? You guys have had a lot of massive growth, right? 15 to 20 franchisees to north of 50.
Well, when I started, we had 5. We currently have 47, so we're growing. But the one challenge for me personally, I've been in a lot of different roles in franchising. I was never in franchise development, so I was never in the sales capacity. My team, oftentimes, we picked it up right after they were sold, and they were going through training and things like that. So it was a learning curve for me in that sense of the, kind of getting up to speed on the franchise development process and things like that. And then I think the other challenge is, just restoration. That business isn't for everybody. Not, a lot of people have a dream of owning their own business, but not one that's 24/7, 365, right? Yep. So that was, I think, another challenge that we faced. So
I see. And what makes UWRG different than all the other franchisors? I mean, I see it, but I want to hear it from you.
Sure. Oh, great question. Well, I think one of the things I love about our company, we're still in the restoration business. I mean, our founders come to our conference almost like franchisees because they're still running United Water locations.
That's awesome.
Our founders are they're facing the exact same challenges our franchisees do. So I think it gives a lot of credibility to our model, and that, hey, we're all in it together. I don't know if you saw the flag in our conference that no one's coming, it's up to us. That comes with us wherever we go. And I firmly believe in that. And I think, that builds a lot of that chemistry you see in our events. So.
And I think another thing that I see very unique is just the corporate support for the franchisees. It seems like you guys have taken maybe not a very carrier-centric path and more of a direct-to-consumer path, although it seems like you play nice in the sandbox with the carriers also. But you also have this support team like Chrissy and Megan and such that help deploy. You have help deploy technology. You guys have an internal marketing team as well.
Yeah.
You mind talking a little bit more about that?
Sure. I mean, some of that stems from, I remember what it was like for me to be a franchisee, right? I think there were times in 7 years where I had great support. Like my first franchise business coach was just phenomenal, helped me tremendously. He moved on, got promoted. His replacement wasn't so great. So I think I'm always having the back of my mind what it was like to be a franchisee, how hard it is and how challenging it can be. So I've tried to find people and build a team that, give that level of hospitality to our franchisees. They're responsive. Our team answers the phone at night, on the weekends, and things like that. Our franchisees are in emergency services, so the support to them has to be kind of the same hours. And they all do that willingly and without complaint, And so I love my team in that sense, and that they genuinely want our franchisees to succeed.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. And you guys are interlinked, right? The more you can help the franchisees succeed, the more corporate succeeds, then you could redeploy that capital back into all these initiatives, which is awesome.
Yeah, that's it. So. And the other thing I love when I looked at the model, one of the first things I looked at was, are they making money off the franchisees in other ways? And there really wasn't. It was really just the initial franchise fee and royalties. No other fees we charge or any money makers or things like that. And having worked, as a franchisee in Domino's, there was a for-profit division. I had to buy my food from Domino's. Yep. Always rubbed me wrong in little ways, right? When I worked for Service Master, I ran 2 businesses for them. I, had the franchise support and drive and royalty, their revenue and our royalties, but I also had a $10 million product distribution business running out of my office. They had to buy from us, right? And same thing with Dunkin. There's a for-profit piece of that as well. So when I looked and saw, listen, the path to success for this brand is because our franchisees are going to succeed. Exactly. And that's the only way we're going to get bigger and better. And that was really appealing to me as a former franchisee.
Yeah, some qualms I have with like the franchise world as an entrepreneur is like, in restoration, EBITDA margins and net profit margins are very small. And if you have the franchisee that ends up taking all of his profit and giving it to corporate, like that's a lose-lose situation.
Right.
That territory can't grow. It's bad for corporate because you got somebody using up that territory and can't kick up royalties. And it's bad for the franchisee because he or she isn't making money. So it's great to be cognizant. And obviously you guys are in a business too, but it's great to hear that you guys are conservative with that. So, Bob, I think viewers are now curious and intrigued on what does this concept of unreasonable hospitality mean, and how does tech really fall into this? Because hospitality is human-on-human connection. And we spent some time here on stage together discussing this. So I think I'd love for you to share that hypothesis that you have with the restoration world. And I know it might be like some secret sauce that you have, so I want to be sensitive to that. But I think everybody needs to hear on why hospitality is important and what the tech aspect is and how you could properly leverage tech for that.
Sure. So for me, I think it in 2 ways. From a hospitality standpoint, I think of what if a loved one of mine had a loss? How would I want them to be treated by a vendor or a provider, right? And doesn't everybody deserve that level of care, right? And it's not common in the restoration space. So we look at it as a way of having a huge competitive advantage. You know, we don't have a lot of franchisees, so our numbers are small. But how can we maximize this opportunity so they can maximize their marketplace? And we, you know, I think it would also help us in our growth and things like that. So that's kind of where the basis of the unreasonable hospitality is you know, I would hope we can deliver that level of care like we're delivering it to a loved one or someone we knew and cared about.
Exactly.
You know, the technology piece lays into it because I know how helpful technology is to me in terms of simplifying my day. I'm run by my calendar. You know, if I use the tools well, they can help me become much more effective. It frees up my mind to not have to think about things.
Absolutely.
Not that my memory is great to start with, right? But at the end of the day, if I can leverage technology in a way to keep me on track or remind me about things to where I don't have to be worrying and thinking about it, it just frees me up to be more present with my team. Frees me up to be more present with anything I'm doing in that moment, you know? And I think that's what technology has the power to do if you can leverage it correctly.
100%. I think we're in alignment there. I mean, 40 to 60% of every single restoration employee's work is dedicated to this scut work that's meaningless, right?
Right.
And not to bash documentation. I think that's important, and we all know the value of it. But like, it's tedious work to sit and do all this paperwork, put in all the notes, and do all this stuff. And when you're doing that work, you're robbing that attention away from the customer, and then you're like half doing your paperwork, half taking care of the customer, and that's a recipe for disaster. And I love the fact that you guys think of different ways to take things off of technician, project managers' plates, so that way they can focus more on hospitality.
Yeah, well, I mean, I come with some of those ideas, but I'd have to credit Chrissy because she keeps me grounded, and she'll ask me at times, well, how's that going to be for a technician, right? Because I'm not a restorer, I'm the franchise guy, right? And as much as I can try and think of that, I have not done that work. So she does a great job of keeping me grounded with questions like that, and you know, reminding me that, hey, well, this way might be better. So in that sense, it's been very helpful for her to, you know, having built restoration business, having been a tech, but she still loves going out in the field, you know. So that's been very helpful as well.
Yeah, that seems like a huge pattern here. Like both Chrissy and Zoli own and operate their individual territories, so they're very close to the work. So when they come up with ideas, they're able to take it from that angle, and then obviously you bring the corporate franchisor expertise. It sounds like a win-win team there. So.
It's been a huge blessing, her having her own location and being my vice president of operations. I think she was worried when she came and talked to me about doing that, and I just saw so many opportunities to be able to play with things and try things, and knew she'd be up for it. That it's been a great little playground for us. And she got to realize the dream of owning her own business, you know, which was wonderful for me to kind of go through again through her eyes and re-experience so many feelings that I had when I became a business owner, you know. So it was been a lot of fun, and I think very beneficial for the brand.
That's awesome. So another thing I noticed, it seems like UWRG has had some greater success than maybe other brands in deploying technology. And I think part of what I realized was when Chrissy went in, she took the angle of the restorer, the technician, and asked herself the question, like, how can I like take this off of people's plates instead of adding something on top of people's plates? To the point where I feel like a lot of people in the room didn't even realize that these automations were going on. It was a part of their workflow. They're like, yeah, I don't know where they came up from, but they're there. They send out text messages and stuff. We have the reports. It all works. Versus I think a lot of, you know, restorers, big and small, they make it so hard, and they add all these tasks on top of their employees and general managers' plates to adopt the technology, and then it ends up not being adopted. I don't know if you have any commentary on that.
Well, I mean, part of that was, you know, as we rolled out a previous software, we tried to give them choices, right? Like as a former franchisee, I was trying to be sensitive to them and give them some input and things like that. I think it's a positive thing. But it hit roadblocks because I could sit down with 3 franchisees and I get 3 different answers on something that seemed pretty clear to us how beneficial it could be for their technician, let's say. So there were certain points and times where we just kind of said, and this is the direction we're going, because we kind of had a sense, Chrissy being close to the technician at heart and what they had to deal with day in and day out, that, hey, these are one of those things we're not going to give them a choice. We know it's going to probably be the best thing, and if we're wrong, we'll admit that and we'll figure out what to do then. But the short term, let's go ahead and just implement it, and you know, they'll have plenty of other things they'll need to figure out and learn when they go to a new platform. But let's take this one off their plate.
I see. That's awesome. Last question. From For somebody that's sitting on the fence and maybe they're large corporate at a franchisor, maybe they're at a PE-backed aggregator, maybe they're just a local restorer.
Sure.
And they're sitting at this crossroads where
Mm-hmm.
it's like, okay, I can either go forward thinking, leverage AI, leverage technology and such, or I could take the safe route. Because forward thinking has its cons, right?
Sure.
Things can blow up in your face. And the safe route is stay on pen and paper, stay on whatever legacy solution that you have. What's your advice to that person on the fence? Would you advise them to go more forward thinking? What are the pros and the cons? And why do you think whatever you think?
Sure. So I would always say go the pro technology route.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just one of those things that, you know, I go back to when I was a franchisee. When I started as a franchisee, it was writing out every order on an order sheet, and then you pulled it off, and you had to put one thing on the box, and you took one a pink sheet over to the make line. And I remember when the gentleman who created our first point of sale system was a Domino's franchisee who had electrical engineering, computer background. He's like, this is crazy. So he wrote the program, wrote the software. And I remember a weekend thinking, we should have been here 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, think of how much better we could have done if someone would have came to us with this idea sooner, you know? And I've seen things like that happen over and over again in terms of adoption with tech. So I'm an old guy, but I love technology. So I would say, regardless of the size of the company, small, independent, you know, larger back PE companies, things like that, I take that leap and invest, especially with something like Albi, where you guys are continually reinvesting in the platform. You know, I don't think you can go wrong with that.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Bob. I really appreciate it. Any last words of advice or anything? Any last comments?
No, I think I'm good. Thank you so
Awesome.
much for your time. I'm
Absolutely.
glad you guys were able to come to the conference with us.
Thanks so much for having us. This was a blast. We love spending time together. I'm looking forward to dinner tonight.
Awesome. Good deal.